Kirsten, Mark, those are two names. They're not the same, but the Kirsten and Mark.
Did you see that?
How's your week this week, Kirsten?
um,
I'm not lying. I'm just saying that there was a lot. There was a lot in that sigh.
the truth will always set itself free. It was that plus mostly fine. I mean, the words that were first going to come out of my mouth after that very complex, involuntary sigh, full of an answer all its own.
Yeah.
The words were going to be, I continue to be blessed and highly favored because I want to lean into the things that I have and am grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly good. I mean, I think things mostly have gone well since the last time we spoke.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
It's okay. I guess like the week truly was like up and down, you know, like mix of good, mix of like less good. I don't know, it was interesting. Like I was just like, it doesn't make sense why I would be tired because with the exception of one evening, it's not like I stayed up really late or anything. So I'm like, well then why would I feel tired? And I think it's maybe just because like there are times when I was like trying to go to bed, but I wouldn't actually go to sleep. You know what I mean? And I'd just be up.
Like a phone or something?
I'd just be on my phone, yeah, or like watching something, or you know, listening to something. And so I think maybe in my head I'm like, oh, I'm sleeping all these hours, but maybe not as effectively as I am. But today was strong. We shot.
Strong contender for good today. Yeah, it's the gladiator of your week.
Yeah. So I could keep going, but overall, it was nice to have that go well.
No, that's good. It sounds like it was productive and successful, both of which are not always promised. So all your variables and potential disruptors played nicely together in the sandbox, which is a win.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dang, I had a thought and it flew right out of my head. Did you see that? Dang. The good one too. I know it was.
May I try and guess it, perhaps?
Yes, please try and guess it.
Yeah. Was it related to something food related?
I don't think so.
Or let me start wider. Is it kind of like leisure or work related?
I think leisure. I mean, I'm gonna go with leisure.
Was it something that you saw? Oh, did you catch it?
No, I was just like I'm having a good time playing this game of figuring out what I was saying. I'm like, what's next?
Was it something that you like saw or experienced this week? Like a movie you saw or a place you went?
Oh my gosh! Yes! You won the game because I remembered the thing.
Oh, great. Awesome. Fun.
Yes. I know we talk about a lot of things, but like something that I saw and immediately binged because hashtag sponsor us Netflix. Netflix got me again. Because I already knew. I'm not sure if you've seen I think it's a series, might be a movie called Away with dang, of course right now I'm not gonna remember her name.
Look
I
it up.
feel like she is a um white female identifying actor that I get down with, like a Jodie Foster type character who played.
Oh, oh, who is this woman?
Uh-huh, right? I know her. She's in lots of things. Oh,
Hilary Swank.
Hilary Swank. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Hashtag sorry, Hilary Swank. Come on our show though. Come on our channel. Small channel, big guest. Hilary Swank. I knew. Is it a show or a series called Away on Netflix?
The series looks like. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So I'm a big space girl. Low key love science, high key love space. We touched on this a little bit last episode. This is like this part of me that not a whole lot of people know about, but like my life is in the stars. Hashtag we all come from the stars. I won't get into it, but just saying. I'm just saying. Look up every now and then. Sorry, I got distracted by how excited I get about space. Nerd alert! So, although the series Away is on Netflix and I'm a space lover, I have planned on watching it. I've yet to watch it. I got distracted. There is a new mini Netflix series about the Challenger.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I think many of us know the basics about the Challenger, being one of our efforts to get to space that did not go well and was not survivable. We touched on this on our last episode. I got people in Huntsville, Alabama. Love it. Call it Hunts Vegas because that's where the party's at. You got to find it, but it's there. But it's a very space-oriented city. And there's like schools named Challenger and programs after the Challenger. So like, I was really excited to watch the mini Netflix series about the Challenger because you really get the inside behind the scenes stories, and it's not one of those biodramas that dances around the point. They spill the NASA tea. We still have respect for NASA. We get it. I mean, okay, you get us to space with a whole lot of other people. We also have SpaceX now. Hashtag shout out to Elon Musk. Please come on our channel. Yes. So we have many ways to engage with space, and I'm so glad that we are back in the space game. But I loved being able to watch that and get those like behind the scenes, true life, talking to the people who were there, the survivors of, as far as like the families go. And yeah, it was just super awesome. Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Does it pique your interest hearing about it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Had you heard of or seen the Away Hilary Swank situation on Netflix?
I've heard of it, haven't watched it. Yeah, but I've been hearing about it. Yeah, I'm excited to check it out because I guess like I had heard about someone talking about it, not realizing that it was a Netflix show, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I love watching sci-fi stuff. Yeah.
Yes. I mentioned in relation to like the from when I think we were growing up time frame, white female actor that like I kind of got down with. I like their choice of movies, and so I also mentioned a Jodie Foster. Hashtag please don't be low-key awful racist people in real life that I just am unaware of, and I'm over here pumping you up during a racial uprising and reckoning. If you are, let me know and tell me to like stop it. But I also enjoy Jodie Foster because I saw her and stuff growing up. she also, I think, you're like our tech guy, our fact checker. I feel like she also did a space movie. Was that her or Hilary Swank who did Contact?
Pretty sure that was Jodie Foster. Yeah.
Yeah.
97.
With Matthew McConaughey, I believe. Hashtag come on our channel.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey.
Yes, we know stuff. I loved that movie. Did you see that?
Yes. It's been so long, but yes, I saw it once. I think I saw it like, I feel like maybe it was one of those things that I saw like from the Blockbuster, like when it came out, you know? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that movie. I've been a space lover for a very long time. One would think becoming an artist in particular, like the actor side of me, like she can't love science. Space? No, she's an artist. She doesn't do that. She doesn't get into that. We do. We love it. There are like, I think it's called the Mars One program. Hashtag get at me, Mars One. Support your local Black person. They have a program that's basically signing up people who are interested in being on a list to go to Mars, but it would be a one-way mission. And your chances of getting chosen are slim to none, right? Very few, or just the ones that are needed because the first ones didn't make it, or like to send waves of people through this program, Mars One program. I mean, I'm sure the list is forever long, but I'm like, I'm into it. I'm into it. The life one would lead on that journey is a lifetime of lives. You would be saying goodbye to this earthbound life, but there are many planets and many adventures to be had off of this planet. I can't wait for us to become a multi-planetary species of people. I may or may not be around for that. Probably not. But I'm excited about like space exploration and becoming like living on a space station, interning on a space station versus at the Nissan dealership.
Yeah. Kirsten, I got to ask, speaking of space, what were your thoughts on the news coming out about Venus?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me.
Oh, let me pull the exact headline just so that I set it up properly. But basically, I think it was, within the past week that we had.
There's some form of life in the findings of Venus.
Yeah, so it looks like there's like a type of gas or something that they noticed in the sky that seems to be a sign of life of some kind.
Yes, I believe it is potentially, the conversation is, now that you've sparked it, I'm like, yes, I do recall this. There is conversation around some molecule that was found in the air, and there is a lot of like, and this is topical, I don't mean to be insensitive, but the visual is very topical to the visual I'm trying to make of like what's happening with the wildfires and the hue of the air. There is literal smoke in the air. On Venus, shots of it from like microscopes and things like that, it is very similar to that. It's very thick with that type of air. And yes, I have heard that the recent conversation is, I almost thought I remembered what it was called, whatever they found, that is one of the building blocks potentially of life. So there's potentially like conversation around, is Venus the future of Earth at the rate climate change currently is at on Earth? There's some of that happening, and yay sayers, naysayers, but get into the conversation. But that is also very exciting. They say, people who say these things, but some of them are scientists and experts alike. They say that especially with what's going on currently and has before in history with the pandemic, the health pandemic, and speaking in regard to also the Spanish influenza, or otherwise known as the Spanish flu, but there's conversations surrounding other plagues and famine in history, about the things that happen prior to that that are sometimes witnessed in the sky in regard to celestial events, and or one might say even more basic or more relatable, a meteor or asteroid that hits, I say shortly before something like a pandemic or plague happens in history, but that relative to time could be like in years, months or years, or immediately, but up to months or years, I think, prior to a health event. They say in some of those conversations that they look for correlations and or have found some in relevance to that. You're like, too much.
Oh, no. No.
I love wisdom.
That's great. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Just like the news about Venus, exciting. I also love learning about ancient civilizations. Are you into those or intrigued at all by those parts of history?
I took a class in high school, and it was about, I guess it was like ancient civilizations. So we read like the Epic of Gilgamesh and like studying Mesopotamia. It was kind of like that period of time, that time period, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love thinking back on what some might call more attainable parts of factual history, as far as like Aztec or civilizations, or like the Mayans, right? I think those are ancient civilizations that many, if not most or all, dare I say, philosophers, astronomers, historians can agree on did exist as an ancient civilization. But I also lean into ancient civilizations like Atlantis, right? That often has naysayers and it might be labeled as lore or legend. But I'm like, that lore or that legend, even if a crumb is based in fact, then let's find that crumb, right? And potentially that will lead to finding that place. Yeah, and there's some really like cool locations on Earth that just have the remnants of ancient civilizations that we know of, and my mind wanders and explores the idea of like the ones that we haven't even discovered yet, don't even know, or walk past every day and think it's like, oh, that's just the molehill in town. But it's like, anyone bored a hole into that? And like in the deep jungles that are yet to be explored, and if and when they are, teams, you lose team members one by one until no one ever comes back, and you're like, I wonder what they figured out, I wonder what they found. We'll never know.
Yeah. I forget, they referenced it in the movie, and I forget which civilization it is. I don't even necessarily know if it counts as like ancient history, but there's that, I think it may be a ship or what, but it's like underwater. They're like these perfectly preserved, like stone sculptures of like a whole army or like a bunch of soldiers. You know what I'm talking about? Let me Google it to see what it is.
I feel like there's one in China, but it's not underwater. That one's like through tunnels and stuff, but deep down and like the build of, I think, the Earth or something. I'm not. There may also be one in water though. I'm just not sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, I guess there's probably several of them, so I don't really know even
Mhm.
which one.
There is one in particular. It may be, I don't think it's one of the wonders of the world per se, but leaning in that direction as far as notability, I do think there is one in particular. Because when you said that, because they're like gray brown sculptures, and each one, not only is the massiveness of the sculptures impressive and notable, but each face of each soldier is uniquely different in the one I'm thinking of. And there are other um, specificities and variables about it that add such intrigue. So there is at least one of the many that is like world known that I can't think of the name.
Yeah, I think it's the Terracotta Army. And
Yes.
it's, from they date it anywhere. Yeah, so I'm just Wikipedia says the Terracotta Army sculptures depicting armies of the first emperor of China, and yeah, dating from the late 3rd century BCE, discovered in 1974. Um, yeah, and looks like estimates from 2007 were that the 3 pits containing the Terracotta Army held more than 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, 150 cavalry horses. And I don't know if those are the sculptures necessarily, or if that's just like what
Yes,
they are.
it's almost like if the armies were in front of you, but they're in these dugout pits,
Yeah.
and clay sculptures of like if they were in front of you and you were like you had magic and just turn them all to, like, yeah, it's impressive to see. Not that I've seen it in real life, just like pictures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I wish I could see it in real life, but I also think like, when are people gonna be traveling internationally like that casually again?
Yeah. The first exhibition of the figures outside of China was held at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne in 1982. Um, let's see. They've been around, but you know, went to Philly. Yeah, yeah, that's wild. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like looking at these pictures, and it's crazy.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? Oh my gosh. There, I also love because I it's also, yes, in the sky. So still low key space love. um but the constellations, and I don't mean that in the way of like I'm someone who's like, so what's your sign? I know what it means, because I often don't care and I really don't know. um, so I'm not into astronomy and the constellations like that. Like, I think some people may casually, when they say that, mean it in that way. I love the history of the constellations, and again, tied to ancient civilizations, the knowledge had by ancient civilizations about the sky when there were no telescopes. Math was not what it is now. No astronomers, no laboratories or observatory. Correction, there were observatories, but they were rustic and surprisingly accurate and technologically much more advanced, just even with the rustic nature, but tied to the fact that they even knew and accurately could have calendars, right? And accurately hypothesize and get correct when eclipses were happening, right? To know
Yeah.
the sky in a way that people now
Yeah.
have to train. I'm just like, I love the sky for that. And building structures, things that were built on the earth during times of ancient civilizations. I often refer to it as land art, but I know that's not its actual title. But like carvings on the side of a mountain or like on the ground, in which were made to be viewed from the sky. You know what I mean? You go, who's looking at that? Who did they then build that for? Like it wasn't for themselves. And or if it was for themselves, it was for a reason beyond themselves. So like that kind of stuff really excites me.
Yeah.
I feel like we also have such unexplored space right here on Earth. Hashtag still get us into space and on multiple planets. But they say the most unexplored area on Earth is the oceans, right? And they cover more of Earth than land does, which is the truth of it. And it's so deep and so vast, we've yet to explore the gravity of our oceans. And what could be in them, Mark? It's like when you stick your hand into soapy dishwater and you don't know what's down there. You never know what you're gonna find. Be careful.
Well, it just kind of makes you, I always kind of wonder, because there's so much more ocean than land, and yeah, like you were saying, like going down to the bottom of the earth, we just really don't know what's down there. And it would just be so cool for someone if there was like a light switch for someone to kind of just like turn it on and see what's going on down there.
Yes.
It'd be really cool to see. Because I mean, you got to imagine that there's just like all kinds of stuff down there.
All kinds. Mm-hmm. There could be water civilizations in our oceans that we are just fully unaware of. Mm-hmm. I think that is such, and if not like water-based civilizations, then even animals we've yet to discover that live further down and are older than we could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes me think of another old school movie. Did you ever see that movie Waterworld with Kevin Costner?
I didn't. I mean, I'm familiar with it, and I know that it was like jet skis and shells and.
Why you gotta bring up that part first?
Because it's like I think, I don't know what it was, but I was maybe watching a documentary about Kevin Costner or a documentary about like biggest flops of all time. And they brought up Waterworld and they're like, it was so expensive. The critics, not to say anything of the audience, but the critics did not like it and lost all this money. Yeah. And I never saw the movie, but all the clips that they showed were just like Kevin Costner from a distance on a jet ski. And so it's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
so that's your sense memory of Waterworld, and you're like, I don't feel like it's gonna be good, or I need to watch it.
It sounded like one of those things where maybe there was a lot of promising ideas in the movie and like a cool concept, but this was in the 90s, right? When like Kevin Costner was at his peak, like Dancing with Wolves kind of peak. Was it kind of like in that time period?
I feel like maybe right before his peak. I don't know where I would put his peak. I feel like it would be with the average person's peak of Kevin Costner. And I don't know the actual year, but I feel like based on maybe a number of things that it was maybe before his peak. I don't feel like it's what Kevin Costner at his peak might agree to do. Mm-hmm. Although, all that said, I loved it. I heard the critics. I hear the people still talking down about it. But again, because of the concept of like civilizations having to adapt to the earth in whatever shape and transition it's in, because if we are not careful, not just you and I, but we, the royal we, as the humans living on the planet today, we will be in our own water world, at least the edges of our continents. Because, baby, Anyway, so I, for multiple reasons, loved Waterworld because I was like, that is not a crazy thought to me. I think throwing in the jet skis and things like that, when you just look at those, you go, why they throw them jet skis in there? Like, that's like, don't do that. But also, it is a world in which the old things that could be saved are still around, and one would and could save a jet ski or two, and you would then, roll like that. So I'm gonna even give a shout out to the inclusion of the jet skis, which gets such a bad rap, and like those elements, because we all gonna laugh if that's exactly what happens.
So, Kirsten, I looked it up, and I think what I found would perhaps validate some of your feelings on the movie. Again, this is Wikipedia, so take things with a grain of salt. But what I saw on the Wikipedia article was like, at the time, it was the most expensive movie ever made. And I've noticed that when movies like are released, people knowing that when people know that it was like expensive, it's kind of like anything where it's just like, if people know a movie was expensive, if they know a sports team paid a bunch of money to get like these players, it just changes the expectations for the movie. So versus like when you go to watch a movie and people are like, oh man, they filmed this on an $8 budget in his mom's basement. You're like, oh wow, really? Wow. So it's one of those things. It's even like, man, speaking of improv, it's like audiences, they come in to see an improv show. It's like, they made this up on the spot versus like, you go to see a stand-up show, people are like, this is stand-up. So like, this better be the funniest thing. Anyway, all that to say, I think that at the time, like, affected things. And in the brief Wikipedia thing, what it said was, it's just like, it had mixed reviews to start, and people liked the concept and the premise, but it seemed like the execution and the acting or certain performances maybe like are what led to reviews not being that great. But it also said that it eventually earned back the money through like video rentals, Blockbuster, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
When I was renting Contact, there were other people that were renting Waterworld, on that same evening.
I was renting them both. And I guess they're still potentially getting money because they, like, Waterworld will, when I still had cable, we stream now, it would just like come on AMC or whatever. It's one of those movies that made it through the then into the now, like Dirty Dancing, right, Waterworld, those movies that if it's on, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna watch it. Again, we stream now, so we wait for no programming.
Real quick, isn't it interesting how that's changed so much? Meaning, I think there's like a positive and a negative to it. What I think is great is that with YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, there's so much more out there. So I think there's more representation. So we could talk a lot about how there's not enough. But even so, because there's YouTube, if there's someone making their own like web series in Oklahoma, you can potentially find that, and like maybe they have a story that speaks to you. And I think that that's great. So ultimately, like, I'm all for that. The thing that's interesting though about like just like the personalization of the streaming, where you can really like just customize your viewing experience at any given time, you're so much less likely to come across something that doesn't already fit your profile.
Yeah.
And not that would be happening all the time on cable, because it's not like there was like all this content. I'm just saying that I'm trying to think of a movie or a show. I mean, let's say you watch Seinfeld every week because that's the most popular show. Whatever came after Seinfeld, you'd probably watch it just once because you were just there. Or it's just like whatever's on the television at 8:00 on a Thursday, as you're flipping those channels, you're maybe going to get exposed to it. And it's not like you have to like it or love it or anything, but there's just more of a chance of getting exposed to it. And I even remember when things were kind of like shifting from stream, like from like cable to streaming. I mean, the shift is ongoing, but
Yeah.
I remember how Chris Rock was mentioning, and I may be misquoting him, so I don't mean to, but the the crux of what I thought he was trying to say was he wasn't really in a he didn't feel like self-releasing a special like on his own website, which may have been more profitable for him in the short run. But his thought was, if I'm on HBO, even people that don't want to see me are going to see me.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you have, you know, if you're kind of going the independent route, the flip side of social media is that it's like, it's so much harder to break through that algorithm to get seen by everyone. So anyway, it's just interesting, you know, like, yeah.
The algorithm is a bitch.
Yeah.
Because if you don't work with it, it will work against you, sometimes unintentionally, and you will get pegged into a hole as a consumer and as a provider of content. And unless you know how to work that algorithm, man, you are so spot on.
An algorithm that's always changing too, you know, like, yeah.
And to keep up is a task all its own, and then to adapt, and then to, yeah, absolutely. And that, I think, speaks to the point of like when cable was the only option, right? When, you know, there was such a familial routine of sitting down, or at least some version of a routine, whether you ate together as a family, you ate on your own after school, you ate at the Y after school. The programming aspect, the lineup, right? Monday, 8 o'clock, Full House. Tuesday, 8 o'clock, Fresh Prince, right? Or whatever it was, or like you planned your life around your life/lives. If you're a family, like be home for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right? I remember watching that on the kitchen. There was a TV in the kitchen, right? There's a TV in the kitchen. Or if we're eating separately on separate levels, we might all be watching the same thing, or we might be all watching something separate coming on a separate network. If you want to watch something separate, you got to go to a different TV. If it's on at the same time. And that was before DVR. Totally aging ourselves here on this episode. But all to say, like, how perpetual the algorithm of even people is, and what we want, so then what is in demand, so what then is provided, and that shift, right? We start to see DVRs, we start to see VHS fall off, right? The idea of recording something, even with DVRs, it's like, okay, if you want to, or I could just pull it up on my streaming device whenever you're ready. The times do change.
And it's interesting, like how they're changing at a faster clip. So, like you mentioned DVR, how that's already kind of like come and gone.
Yes.
Or like, yeah, or like Blu-ray, which hasn't how long was Blu-ray even around?
For like a second.
Was it even around for 10 years?
No, I would say it was hot for like 2 to 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, and it's just kind of like interesting how that narrows. How you had like, be like VHS tapes, what, had like 20, 25 years, 25, 20 to 30 years, let's say.
It had a long run.
Maybe even
That's
longer.
all people had.
Yeah. And then like DVDs had maybe like 15 years, and then like Blu-rays, you know, had an even shorter run. Yeah.
It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
And the access to content is so exponentially increased. And I think that goes even beyond TV and movie consumption, just content in general. Again, with the YouTube platform, which shout out to YouTube, we own it now. But it's like all of the other platforms are all so easily accessible that even extends this day and age to the exponential growth of technology as well. It has aided to the access of food at the touch of a button on your phone, right? It's great to be touchless now because of the health pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
but we were around the corner from that anyways with the ease of the app, right? There is an app for everything. If there's not, build it, make it. Now there is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just cool to
Yeah,
think about.
it is. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's just such a yeah. It's just so interesting to think that like, and going back to Waterworld, like when that came out, it's like, I mean, Blockbuster was around in '95, but I'm sure that they weren't necessarily relying on, oh, we'll make it back in video rentals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it still came out at a time when it's just like, you come out with a movie, it's got to sell tickets in those first 2 weekends.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, you're toast. But how crazy is it that it's like, that's a property that can just kind of continue to exist. And if it's good or if it speaks to someone, even 25 years after the fact,
Yep.
it can still find an audience. And something like that's really interesting to me. Um,
Yeah. If you can make it, there's an audience for it. And I think that that is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing for the opportunities for content creators, but it is a curse because you go and find some very unique audiences. And I'm trying to be as polite with how I say the other side of that coin, right? The content that is created for certain groups is, not great. It's malicious and sometimes harmful to the watcher and or to the person on video. I'm trying not to say like snuff film or something, right? But that is content, and I mean, there is a spectrum for content, and again, if you can make it, there is someone who probably is like, yeah, I want to see that.
yeah, I mean, it really is so interesting. I mean, especially I guess like now that I mean, I realize people have had access to videos on their phones for some time, I but I'm still surprised by just how it changes everything.
Yeah.
So, as we've discussed, I've been trying to specifically cook different things than I normally would. And it's just so wild how, growing up, it's like I'd either have to get a recipe from someone verbally
Yeah.
or a cookbook. You could watch a cooking show, but unless you were taking notes, it was more like for entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I got out of most cooking shows. Cause like a lot of times, anyway, but what's crazy is it's like I can type in a type of food and what equipment I have. And there's like all these different videos of how to make it. And it is a really effective way to learn. It's so effective.
Yep. You're like, I've got popcorn, bread, a screwdriver, and mustard. Tell me what to do.
Yes. And they'll be like, this is what you do. And, Kirsten, you were mentioning like there's an audience for it.
Yeah.
And it's like these super niche dishes
Yes.
have like all these views, understandably so, because it's like there are people that need to make this stuff. But it's just so fascinating. I mean, these aren't meant to be like, like TV shows. I mean, they are, but it's just a cool way to use video, in my opinion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I get excited / cautiously intrigued about what that means about the future of video.
Mm-hmm.
The ease will be perpetual and exponential as it has been. And so 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, what does that ease look like? Right? We live in Tom Cruise's, what was that movie? AI? No, that was Will Smith. Future.
Minority Report with the.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Is that where we're living? Right? Send me that file. Thanks, Mark. Because we basically do that from phone to phone. So yeah. Is it now a chip in our arm 50 years from now? Yeah. Where you know, if I don't know how it works, we're not there yet, but what does that ease look like? And does it benefit or harm the masses or the greater good or whatever?
Mhm.
I don't know. Let's see. You want to get into the next episode?
Oh, I'd love to.
Know thyself. I can be long-winded.
Oh, Kirsten, you drop gems. I too can be long-winded, and I think it's great. You know.
Yes. All right. So we are getting back into the Umbrella Academy. I don't know why I do that. Right. I feel like they fight a lot because they're super sibs. So the Umbrella Academy, we are on, as far as TUA, the Umbrella Academy is concerned, we're on its season 2, episode 3, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, great. That means I watched the correct episode. Good thing. Cool. We drop into like first scene, like Klaus sitting at eating and then subsequently getting kicked out of a diner, out onto his face. And he meets in that moment the shoes of, the hand of, and the person of this little old lady with a big old rock on her finger, so clearly rich. And she's like, I'll take care of you. Come with me. I don't know why she sounds like the witch in the gingerbread house, but you know, whatever.
Mhm.
But she like becomes his sugar mama, but I don't think there's like sex or weird stuff. But she takes care of him,
Mhm.
basically. Uh,
Yeah, and I'm guessing this is like, from what the way I interpret it is this kind of like a flashback, kind of showing how he like originally
yeah.
kind of got all his money. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on, because they don't spend too much time, and we see in that shot that it's 1961, and because there's so much time jumping with 5 time jumping McGee Sib, and just in season 2 off the bat, because of how they got into season 2, the dropping into the early 60s, but one at a time, at different days, times, hours, whatever. So they're all strewn throughout the same town in the same timeline, but at different points in time. So we see opening that it's 1961, and reminder for anyone watching, Klaus is also by proxy with Ghost Bro Ben, because they're basically, all of their scenes are together. Klaus sees, accesses, can control and engage dead people. One of the super sibs is Ben. We don't see a whole lot of him in season 1. What we do know is that he's dead. Rest in peace, Ben. But because Ghost Bro can see dead people, he has never not seen Ben. So, and we know that nobody else can see Ben as a viewer, for anyone who's watching. So it's 1961 when Klaus, by proxy Ben, find this old lady, and that becomes her sugar mama, takes care of Klaus. He also plays up his power for her because she lives in this big old house, has company over so that they can see him like levitate, basically, which is really just Ghost Bro Ben, like holding them up and stuff. And I'm like, you better work your super sib power. You better get through, because we talked about this, I think, in the last episode, or the last maybe couple episodes, I forget, maybe it's the last one. How we were kind of like, they did an okay job, and you can tell the writers are approaching the storyline with intellect, but we were kind of talking about like, how did some of these people get by like without money? They touch on some of those elements, but this is definitely one where we're like, all right, Klaus, you better make it work with what you got. You better impress this old lady, because she really did give him everything and helped him low-key start a cult, basically, because he could do these remarkable things. Let's see. We see his like followers kind of sort of, because we flash to 1962 and see him in India, longer hair, right? A year has passed. He has even more followers and is playing up the prophet thing like hardcore now. I think Old Lady McGee is still in tow, just like one of the prophet's followers, just like the main one, I guess, the first one. You can tell in the quick India 1962 shot that like Klaus is kind of showing signs of wear and tear of this prophet life. Get off me. These lays are heavy. I'd like to maybe wear a shirt every now and then, and my hair is getting too long, or whatever. He doesn't say all that, but you can see the annoyance start to surface. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to 1963, quick shot, and we see he is fully over it. I don't remember exactly where the 1963 shot is, but it's like in this field, many more followers, and he sneaks away basically and drives away and escapes all of it and leaves all of his profits. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Short and sweet of kind of the opening of this episode. I think we then cut to Lila and Diego. Lila is stitching up / cleaning up post that like beautiful knife fight where he got shanked by this timeline daddy in that beautiful shadow fight from, I think, last episode. So this is the next time we're seeing Diego. And she basically is stitching him up. And all the while he's like, I gotta get up. And he can't. But again, # hero complex. Gotta go save the world. That's also a pretty quick snippet of this whole opening scene feels like a vignette or a montage of snippets. Would you say so?
I would say so, yeah. Quick moments.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like the only other notable thing in this snippet of it before it moves on. But I think the inclusion of it is worth saying out loud, because I was like, why do they keep showing that? When Lila is stitching up Diego, Five is there, and I guess he's just now getting back to Elliot's apartment, where again has become the hub of the super sibs as they find and gather in this timeline. And he's like, oh, you hear him reference like, oh, good, he's not dead, right? So they separated, and Diego got crunched up by that timeline daddy, and Five got scratched by baby Pogo, who he ran into when they got separated in that house, which is the umbrella company business address that they thought they were going to find dad at, or that timeline dad. But because he got scratched in that previous scene, in this scene where he's watching Lila stitch up Diego, I found it interesting that they made the scratches on Five's neck so noticeable. And from Pogo, right, from that aforementioned fight. And I was like, is that a sign to pay attention? Because they don't like zoom in on it, but it's 4 very clear, maybe to my mind, maybe too clear, almost like the special effects, not that it needs to be an open wound, but it feels like 4 red lines of mascara or of eyeliner. Mm-hmm. That's supposed to stand for the remnants of that monkey claw scratch, which I think would be more than what seems like a very superficial, not to the epitome of what it could be done, scratch effect. I'm like, what is this? Why is it so noticeable? And also, why is it so basic? What, did you notice those?
I no, or I mean, like thinking back, I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
I think
Question about,
he's even holding a thing over them when he
yeah, I
first like
remember that.
watches, and then when I think because that is such a direction or a choice, when he removes it, there are these basic ass scratch lines, and I'm like, who getting fired? I'm sorry, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
So I don't know if we cut back to Diego and Lila, but so I may be jumping the gun. But while Lila's stitching up Diego, does their relationship also become like romantic? Go definitely from platonic to romantic in this moment as well.
Um, in this episode, yes, we do cut back to it going fully romantic, but
Yeah.
even before the cut back to like Soup's romantic times, in this beginning snippet of that, we see just her caring for him, I think is also a sign of the growth of that relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw her, or at least we saw a female silhouette that looked to be Lila drop into the rafters of the warehouse of that scene where Diego got jacked up. So we know it was her that like basically rescued him because of that, and she says so in the dialogue of this beginning snippet. But I think her just like even caring for him is another evolution before that ever evolution. um Anyways, yes, so again, this all feels like one big scene for this beginning one, because that's over so quickly, and we cut to Vanya speeding down the road again, same night as the fight back home, same timeline, right? Same night as the last episode left off, where the fight happened and Vanya ran out of the house. Last we saw her, because she woke up middle of the night having a dream flashback of playing her instrument. And she kind of freaks out and leaves. Last we saw her. So now we see Vanya again driving down the road in the night. So still that same night, presumably. I think she gets stopped on the road by Milkman of the Bad Bro 3. And he's got a gun in his belt, behind his back. She doesn't see that. She stops though. Mistake. Because it's just a setup. The other two bad bros come at her from the side. She sees that. So she like takes off and tries to get away. They go pew, 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 pew. And she crashes. And you're like, come on, you just had to go straight. Gets out, runs into a field of like corn, right? Some high field of something. They basically end up finding her. And one of them is like this close with a gun, goes to and pulls the trigger. Bullet comes out. Girl still doesn't remember anything. But even in season 1, we saw that her power, though made to believe she didn't have one, is the boss power of the group. Maybe second only to 5. Maybe not. Maybe tied. But she never knows when she engages her power. It engages to save and or assist her when it needs to, but she don't remember shit. So it engages when she is about to get shot by one of the 3 bad bros. It does not comply. It like you see this like sound wave shatter like the bullet and like blow back all 3 bad bros, and she takes off running and gets away, and you're like, oh shit. Yeah, and then I think there's a lot of quick cutting. We cut to 5 and I wrote Eugene, but his name is Elliot. 5 and Elliot back at Elliot's place, one of the many machines they have is going off, and Elliot's like, one of these machines you had me get is going off. Five is like, which one? And he's like, the sound wave one or whatever. Basically connecting the dots for Five and for the viewer that machine Five had acquired by Elliot so that he could tell when Vanya used her powers. So it's connecting that engagement that just happened in the field. So Five is like, great, I'm gonna go find her. He pops out, seemingly. There's a time discrepancy for me here. I don't think it's a big deal, but again, she engaged at night in that field against getting shot by one of the three bad bros and then runs away. I think we're supposed to engage in thought with and contextually know or believe that she hunkers down for the night.
Okay.
Right? Because when Five is looking at this machine, it could have in real time been night, but in the reality of the timeline of this episode, he pops out right away. And when he pops into that field, it's daytime.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, your machine went off late, right? Like 10 hours late, maybe, because it's not like dawn. It's daytime. It might be morning, but it's like 9, 10 a.m., maybe 8 a.m., but it ain't, right? It hours past nighttime. So there was a time discrepancy for me there because he pops right out looking at the machine. And when he pops into that field and finds Vanya in the next shot, it is daytime. Writers, editors, get at me. Did you pick up on that?
No, I guess.
Or what are your thoughts on that now, hearing it maybe?
I guess my thought kind of goes to the machine itself. So did did it go off right when Vanya used her powers? Was when Five looked at it, is like, oh, the other night, you know what I mean? Like I'm kind of wondering, like, at what point did Elliot have the machine and did the alarm go off? How much time had passed since Vanya had used that to escape, you know? So that's kind of like where my question comes in, I guess, with like the passage of time. Is it like, oh, I got this machine, I hooked it up for you, and oh, she's emitting signals right now, even though she did it the other day? Or, so I don't know.
I think even if it's not like the editing, right? Because sometimes you just edit something and you forget, oh, the arm was up over here.
Yeah.
Although if you're editing, you have one job. Although I know it's complex, no shade to editors. But I think it could have been remedied with just some nuance in language by the character, because the way it's shot is that, and maybe if I go back and watch it, I'll see that there's daylight through a window behind the shot, or maybe there's night, and that will tell us when the machine went off, because the shot is the machine going off and registering the blast. If they could have said, it's happening right now, this is the address, right? That would have told us, okay, it went off right when it happened. Or with the nuance in language of like, it said this is a reading from 10 o'clock last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long, right? How long ago was that, right? 5 hours ago? Elliot, you gotta go, right? So just, I feel like they could have made that a little cleaner for themselves and for us. But I digress. Let's push forward. Let's see. The next thing is, so Five shows up in the field and finds Vanya. It's daytime, maybe the next morning, let's assume. She doesn't remember anything. He, I think, quickly realizes she doesn't, reaches out a hand of, it's safe, come on. She's like, who are you? He's like, I'm your brother. Brother, what? So, right, she's not hiding that she doesn't know. It's still, hey, I don't know who you are. You're my brother. How do you know me? And as they're having this, like, it's safe, come on out with me. Let's get out of here. They're going to come back looking for you or whatever. I think something I found a lot of joy in, it's so silly, in 8th grade, was her sound emission of her power in the field from the night before. We see it as they walk out of where she's been scrunched down, hiding, I guess, for the night. And they zoom up into this aerial shot, and she totally made a boob with a nipple and everything. Like the aerial shot. I'm like, who didn't see that? Someone is a comedian who left that in. Nobody noted that? Like, I don't know. I thought it was so funny because it's a circular, it's like a field press of corn, right? When, they say, how did that get made? UFOs or somebody right? Whatever. But it looks like one of those in one big circle. But where she was standing in the middle, there's like an indent. I'm like, that aerial shot is one tittied up booby.
That's funny. I did not notice that. I'm trying to, oh man.
Yes.
That's a joke that the show would make though, like, oh wow, I Googled it, yeah.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
I was like, that's funny. I mean, not to be jokey McGee, but I found that a funny part of the episode. I was like, interesting. Okay. Also makes sense because of the emission of her power. It does seem circular in its engagement. So I also buy it. I just had to mention it. So we move on, and I think we cut quickly to Luther. He's on jog. See him being like kind of followed and admired by some kids. He sees a similar to Allison looking female walking down the sidewalk, trips, realizes it's not her, gets back up and goes back to the boss's club, and basically asks his boss to look Allison up. He's like, basically, I want to find someone. Do you know people who can find someone? You know people like that, right? And he's like, yeah, man, anything for my right-hand man. Can't have you moping around here, right? And so there's a very like, I'll take care of you. Yes, he's relying on him to perform in these underground fights, so he treats him well for that reason. But as we mentioned in, I think, episode 1, we kind of see his boss, who represents Jack Ruby. Is that right? In history?
Well, yeah, his boss is Jack Ruby, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But there's like almost like a father-son style relationship between the two, almost, one might say, stronger or better than actual Scrooge McDuck Umbrella Academy dad.
Yeah. Does Luther make you sad? He makes me sad. I'm not laughing at him, but it's just like, I'm not laughing at him. I'm just like, oh man, it makes him sad, and so I laugh. But like, I don't know. His storyline makes him sad.
It's like they only have each other, kind of, because you see Jack Ruby. I think it's interesting, and this is someone who doesn't know a whole lot about Jack Ruby as far as anything more than the basics, historically. But I think, and so there may be some truth to these variables that I'm about to comment on. There is a tenderness that is given to that character because we see him sewing his own sequence costumes for the people at his club. He's at the sewing machine. So not only does he know how to sew as a character, which I think is an intentional notation, but he's he's not a performer, so he's caring for and doing. He didn't hire a seamstress. This character, he's doing it himself. And there was the cutest little wiener dog sitting next to him on this cute little pillow, who he'll do anything for, right? And he's like, I just think there's such a tenderness that was intentional, and I made a little note about it. I was like, that seems very a soft element of that character, who then asks his right-hand man, almost unlike Luther, to fight, right? There's this unique, seemingly balance with this character. I don't know.
That's a great observation, yeah, because it's like, that's really cool to think about, that they just kind of don't write him off as just like gangster.
Yes, gangsters have feelings and puppies too, and sequins that they have to sew onto costumes because there is a show tonight and the club will be filled. So Luther writes down the name and basically asks his boss to find Allison. He thinks she's in the town, city, somewhere. Help me out. He's like, great, I got your back. And then we cut back to Klaus and to Allison showing up at now Klaus lounging in the pool of his ex-profit mansion situation. And so they meet each other now in this timeline for the first time. They're very excited to see each other. They catch up. She catches him up on like, hey, I'm married. His name is Ray. And then he's like, is he locked up? And then they make the connection that not only does Klaus know Allison's husband in this timeline from an earlier scene in an earlier episode, but he can help her get him out, right? Like, now that I know that's your husband, let's go get him out. You got a problem? I got you. We also learn in their dialogue, which I think is key because we touched on it in an earlier hour episode. We wonder as the viewer, based on Allison in an earlier season 2 episode, almost using her rumor power, if she has used it in this timeline, who knows? And if anyone who knows is Ray, her husband. We find out that she has not. Right. She confirmed she has not used her power. Not only has she not used it in this timeline, but we get a glimpse back to season 1, and because she says specifically, I haven't used my power since, and then she doesn't finish it. It cuts to when Vanya cut your throat with with her sound power, because Allison, the last time Allison tried to rumor someone, she was trying to rumor Vanya for her own safety, really. One might say, but Vanya wasn't having it, nor does Vanya remember yet that she's even done that. So we find out in this scene all of that goodness from Allison. She has not used her rumoring power in this timeline, and that also means by proxy Ray does not know about it,
which is just interesting for a number of reasons. One, you're just like, oh wow, like Allison, I mean, I have no problem with her using her power or anything like that, but it is just kind of impressive that she's gotten by without it, just because in season 1, I guess she felt like, oh, maybe I don't know who I am without this or something. I mean, she also went through like a very traumatic injury, so I'm not trying to like minimize that. But to me, I don't know. It's just kind of impressive that she wouldn't use that, just given how much easier that could have made her life.
Yeah.
On the flip side, and again, no judgment here at all, but it's just like, that is so much a part of who she is. The fact that Ray doesn't know that yet, it's just like, oh. But, you know, they're early on in their marriage, you know, so.
That's so true. And I didn't really think this until I started kind of hearing you touch on that. There are the beginnings the disintegration of what you kind of see as the cutest, most like, I'm so glad they found each other, Allison and Ray relationship. Like, she's the only one who has married, right? She's, not only does he not know a huge part of her by not knowing that, it makes you go, oh, this might not be as cute as, right? Because it can, not that it can only be its fullest cuteness with everything on the table, but you start to realize it's only as good as the life she's living in this timeline. But that's not her whole life. It's not all of who she is. He also doesn't know about any of the siblings or her, right? So he doesn't know so much about her. And I know I started to be like, no, I love them. No. So yeah, that was kind of like, and as we continue, I mean, that disintegration continues, unfortunately, and relatively quickly, like in this episode. Which also makes me sad. But it makes for good TV. I think we skipped to the handler. And the handler goes into a pet shop. We hear some conversation with her and this little boy. There's a bunch of fish and fish tanks in this pet shop. That's where most of the scene takes place in front of. They talk about the bullet hole, how she was shot. Is the bullet still in there? He's like low-key little kid, intrigued. But then he pisses his pants because she whispers, I'm sure, something very scary in his ear. He runs off, and you see her focus in on this treasure chest in one of the fish tanks. And it's clear that something is up with the tank and or that chest. But then that's all the scene is. And you're like, what? Yeah. But we get answers later, so it's okay. I think we cut back to Allison, who's now in the beauty shop where she works. And they're having a sit-in meeting because the sit-in's about to happen. It's days away. Kennedy's about to come into town, so they're hoping to gather attention around their sit-in prior to his arrival to bring awareness to the civil rights movement that they are a part of and that is happening in history. Allison's at the beauty shop meeting with the sit-in, and they're talking about, let's cancel it because Ray's not there because he's in jail, right? Yeah. There is a dynamic of, without Ray, one of the other Black male leaders seems like in the scene is trying to kind of not necessarily hardcore take the reins, but instead of it being Allison next in line as the companion of Ray, which I think I'm all for. And as the viewer, I think the viewer is for as well. I think the writers know that. The reason they write in that other energy, but then we see her like say no thank you to that bullshit. Basically she's trying to say no, let's not even talk about canceling it. Ray would want us to continue, like he's all about the sit-in, we should go forward, and basically gets the support of another lady in the beauty shop who's not having any of that bullshit. And they vote and win to push forward and have the sit-in. Yeah? And that's, again, short and sweet, where they just kind of clip through quickly and don't really sit into a whole lot here. We then cut to the jail where Ray is being held, which we've seen in a previous scene, where Ghost Bro, still invisible. We don't see the visible version of him in this scene, but we acquaint ourselves with the a-hole clerk, desk clerk, who gave Allison a hard time. And Ghost Bro is like putting him through it, throwing his sandwich across the room and typing on the typewriter. Again, he's invisible to desk clerks. So desk clerk is just freaking out. Basically like, release Ray or I'll haunt you forever or something. And so he lets Ray out. Then we see Ray walking out, and he runs into Klaus. Klaus is there for a reason, because he's there with Ghost Bro.
Yeah.
And basically in the scene, Ray finds out by way of Klaus, now having met Allison, the reason he came back to help get Ray out, that, man, I'm your brother-in-law. Like, we've got a lot to talk about. And then we kind of leave it there. But Ray finds out about one of Allison's brothers. What? That he didn't know she had. Who was white.
We got him. Yeah. Who we met in jail.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. Who we met in jail.
Yeah. A lot of questions.
Yes.
A lot of questions.
I think we move on. Yeah. We push forward to like 5 with Vanya at a different diner. 5 is catching Vanya up with his typical, hey, not the typical, because he's catching her up and having to tell her who he is and who she is, but he's not telling her everything. Because again, everyone remembers what happened except Vanya. That also means everyone remembers how badass and hardcore she can be if she gets upset. So he's not telling her the whole truth, but he's telling her like most of it.
Yeah. Which always would make me nervous whenever the siblings would do that, because I'm just like, y'all, season 1, reason she blew up, because y'all would not communicate with her. And yeah. So anyway, I saw that and I'm like, y'all are playing a dangerous game. You know?
They really are.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know. There is again, let me just touch on, we still see the basic AF scratches on his neck, which bother me, but they are again very visible. And I say very visible. There is a choice, whether by the director or someone, where to place the actors blocking wise. They shot this scene with them sitting next to each other in an orientation where we could see the side of 5 that had the basic AF scratches. And again, I go, who's getting fired? And who's missing a red eyeliner pencil? Basic AF. But they're still there. And not only does 5 try and carefully tell Vanya who she is, who he is, that there are other siblings, that was an apocalypse. There was a big time jump. There's a new apocalypse, and he needs her help. She also low-key is like, oh my gosh, right? Like hearing this information for the first time. Air quotes only because she still lost her memory.
Yeah.
She goes to call farm wife McGee that she's been staying with and is getting closer and closer with. Kind of like, because this is the first time she will have made contact since leaving in the middle of the night with the family car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so she calls Ladyface McGee from the farmhouse. And we don't get to the end of that scene until a second or two from now. We cut to Diego, waking up again from having been bandaged up by Lila. Now she's finished. He tries again to get up. He's like, I gotta go save JFK, but he's still in no shape. And I'm like, okay, I feel like this is hardcore hero complex that they didn't need to play up quite so much, but maybe they did. I don't know. Did you think that was, because again, he was like, I gotta go, right? What did you think of that?
I guess I didn't see it as much in Diego in season 1 as much as I did in season 2. In
Yeah.
season 1, from what I remember, and it's been a while since I've seen season 1, but the feeling that I got was that he was like investigating things. You know, he was like getting closer to things. That's how it felt like for me. Or he was motivated because like someone close to him may have been lost. So it's like, I'm doing it for this person. Whereas with this, and I get the desire to want to stop the murder of JFK. Not trying to say that that's not important, but it's like there are all kinds of things that you could do to offset him being killed. It just didn't make him appear very intelligent.
It really didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Diego.
Yeah.
And also he got the like heart of the powers.
Yeah.
That Captain Planet reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Lila stops him, and this is where things definitely step up a little bit with that relationship. Because not only does she keep him from leaving and harming himself further, we're all sure. They bond over this like story she shares about the murder of her parents as a young girl. And how that's because he's like, why did you follow me? I'm glad that you saved me, but why were you following me anyways? And she uses that story to kind of say like, well, people always leave, and I saw you trying to bail on me, and I had to follow you. I didn't want to get left behind. I think we come back to that here very soon. So we kind of get another layer of that story. But through and on the other end of that story, Diego is like pulled in and is like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I won't leave you, blah, blah, blah. You see them like soups bonding. You feel the like, oh, it's all about to happen. And then indeed Diego, because they're only like this far away, and then he leans in for the kiss. True Lila style, she like clocks him open hand, smacks him hardcore. And he's like, there's that super funny moment. He's like, I don't get you. What? And I think he literally says that, and it's so funny. I laughed out loud, for real. But then they totally bone. Yeah. In the next like breath, she's like, he's like, just be gentle, just like take it easy with me.
Yeah. I gotta say, I think Diego has the most laugh out loud lines of the season. I think he's got the most of them. Yeah, because I remember that moment was like, what are you doing? Why?
Yeah. And as the viewer, you totally felt that energy as well. So when he leans in for the kiss and she smacks him so hardcore, you're like, you're also saying that. Like, what is happening? It's truly quite funny. But then again, she crawls on top and they get it done. Because again, he's injured. He can't do a whole bunch. But they totally bone. Like, yeah. So we cut back to the handler. In the tub. Beautiful green, like maybe subway tile, and this like old school 60s green tub. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful visual. I really want to shout out to like the beauty of that shot, because it really was, because she's like bubbles, tub, and then there's just like, it's beautiful. But we see her basically doing recon. Like there was an old guy version of Five in his young school outfit version in this like book that she has. And so I think we're made to think she's doing something recon wise on 5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we get a lot of answers about that, and that scene is also fairly short, but it's pivotal on the, I think, later part of the season. So I wanted to just note it.
Mm-hmm.
Ever so quickly, like so much of this episode, we cut back to Luther, and his boss has found Allison, has an address. There you go, buddy. Get your head right for the fight tonight. Go do what you gotta do. Come back ready. And so he's like, oh, thanks. And he goes to find her. He goes to that address, and I think we go right to there, if I'm not mistaken. He has, I think, a box of chocolate, a box of something edible, which I think is chocolate.
Yeah. Does he also have flowers?
You know, I thought he had flowers.
Or is it just the chocolates?
I think maybe he did have flowers. I don't remember, but I think you're right. I think there were also flowers. Because again, low-key love interest between Luther and Allison, although they're super siblings, no blood relation, but still siblings nonetheless. And in season 1, along with season 2, they remind us of low-key awkward love connection. And it's only awkward because of the sibling aspect, but again, they're only super sibs, not like blood sibs. And I don't think anything has actually ever happened, but there is definitely a level of connection and love interest between Luther and Allison. So he goes to find her, goodies in hand, and meets Ray, because she ain't home. I guess Ray's just got out of jail and goes home, and so walks up behind Luther, and Luther's like, oh, I must have the wrong address. I'm looking for Allison, old last name. And he's like, oh, you must mean Allison, new last name. That's my wife. And Luther is shook. Low-key shook. He doesn't like beat up Ray or anything, but the next thing is like, they go inside and they chat, and Ray as a character is also again finding out, not only does he see, I think, that there's some type of sadness about finding out that he's married to her, right? Luther seems dejected, so that says something, right? But also in the same vein, which has got to be trippy for Ray, along with low-key awkwardness for the viewer, he also has to deal with finding out about another brother out of nowhere that is also white. And Luther being the strong bro, he's big and like, he's a massive person. And so there's a weird element, a love element, and another brother element. And it's like, who are you looking for my wife?
I gotta say, I'm shocked that neither Klaus or Luther said more other than I'm Allison's brother. Not like, I'm her brother, we're from the future, she has these superpowers. I'm glad, or not glad, I'm just surprised that between the two of them, nothing against either one of them, neither one of them or discreet, you know? Klaus just talks. Luther, when his emotions get the best of him, isn't really going to keep a secret. So it's just kind of interesting that neither one of them really like checked in with Allison first. Both of them talked to her husband, and like all of her secrets pretty much stay intact, you know?
Right. I mean, I do think it's remarkable that they didn't say more, whether intentional on the behalf of the writers or not. I think it's remarkable. But also it's like, find out. I guess they were both looking, or I guess Klaus wasn't looking for Allison first. He just happened upon Ray. and Luther was trying to find Allison, but it's just like that could have gone way wrong. But it went okay. So they catch up, and we hear that they've been married for a year in the dialogue between the two of them. There's a phone call, and I think we're made as a viewer, and correct me if I'm wrong, to believe that it's for Ray in the way of, come on, man, we're going forward with the sit-in. Where you been? Get down here, right? And I don't know what I think about that. The logistics of continuity for me, as someone who's been on set and has been spoken to about, I need you to pick up your fork for continuity. And I'm tired of holding my forking fork. So as someone who knows, when someone cares about continuity, they're going to be on it. So there maybe is or even just the attention to the detail of truth of the world, right? Mm-hmm. You at home, no one, I think maybe, it seems like Allison spoke with Klaus, knew Klaus was going to use Ghost Bro to go get him out. Why didn't she wait outside for him to connect, knowing she had argued for the sit-in to go forward for the date already agreed upon? Why is he out of the know and getting a call at home from someone other than Allison, because she's the only one who knew he was out in the first place, and Allison seemingly already at the sit-in? So I had issues with that continuity of attention to detail in that world. Mm-hmm. But I also acknowledge that most people probably could care less. As far as writers or viewers, it's like nobody cares. Mm. But I think it added, and maybe it was intentional because of this next thing, I think it added to the chaos of what came next in this episode, which because of how it was shot, I think they wanted a sense of chaos, but I don't think it needed this element of not having the connective tissue of how Ray didn't know the sit-in was going forward for the date that had already been agreed. I'm just like, why are you at home chilling, Ray? And Allison, why didn't you link up with Ray knowing your Ghost Bro was going to get him out? There were going to be questions there. Why weren't you abreast to be aware and ready for that? I have words to say. But I digress. So I think he's like, I gotta go, man. You want to leave a message for Allison? He's like, just tell her I need to talk to her. It's like, okay, great. So that's over. We go to Allison showing up, walking into the diner for the sit-in that's already pre-planned and happening was planned.
Yeah.
So she's walking in, the sit-in has started. Hashtag y'all sit-ins. Vital to the cause. I do think I don't know how I want to say what I want to say. I don't want to knock how they shot the sit-in. I mean, that choice is a choice, and I think we've talked about how cinema addresses real life things that happen, but in real life were far worse than one would script or probably want to show.
Yeah.
I say want to for the comfort of others, right? Not everyone's gonna be okay. It's like Roots versus something else, right? Roots is gonna probably tell you like it is. So I just want to comment enough on the sit-in to say it was intellectually shot to have the impact they needed for the montage they were putting in place, because it was fairly mild. But again, I don't say that to knock the writers or anything like that. But I did note as a Black person watching it, I was like, this is very mild for as far as how real sit-ins went. The ease in which the next person walked in to sit down was a choice. The cops staying outside for so long, so patiently, for hours, right? Because when Allison walked in, she was the first, and it was daytime, right? Seemingly the same time in which the call came to the house that Ray got when he was talking to Luther in the middle of the day at the house. So it was daytime when Allison walked in, and the shots were so that there were a series of shots all in this one scene that happened within minutes, in which by the end of the shots, by the time Ray shows up, somehow I believe it's nighttime, and now the cops are coming in. And I'm like, how polite of them to wait all day. Knowing that's not like the truth doesn't matter. I wasn't there, but knowing from history and the stories that get passed down from family members who were around in those times, even the choice of what the actors playing the racist white people in the diner doing the unkind things to them, like used to be in real life putting out lit cigarettes, peeing on them, right? Pushing them off their stools, hot coffee on their face, right? There's just the choice to have the people lined up, not touching them. There's one person I think who pours like some coffee or water over their heads, but there's the bigger group of players playing the racists in the diner going, get out. And I'm like, that's cute. I just was like, okay. It's a choice. But, whatevs. I just thought it was such a maybe appropriately yet muted choice for how the diner sit-in scenes were shot.
Such a tough thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because it's just like the muted stuff, you're just kind of like, okay. But then, like, if they were to show, like, let's say a more uncensored version of it, if it was in any way entertaining, that'd be weird too. Like if it was shot for like entertainment purposes.
I do think that there is a lot of land in between, though.
Oh no, I agree. I'm with you. It's just kind of interesting because it feels like when they show this period of time, when they show sit-ins, I kind of get the feeling where it's just like, wow, isn't this wild that those people were like that? Isn't that nuts? Instead of like, those are your aunts, uncles, grandparents that are still very much alive. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's not like, imagine some crazy time.
You have to imagine, here's the address of a real life person who was in the diner doing that very thing or worse about 40 years ago. 50.
Oh man, Roy Wood Jr., I'm going to botch the bit just a little bit, but he just talks about like an old Black man going to like a civil rights museum, or an old Black person just being like, that's me in the picture, And I feel like you could also just as easily do where he points to a white person in the picture. It's like, Harold, isn't that you? Remember you, Harold? You were. I mean, you could,
I mean, I love that idea. And I think the racist antithesis could potentially be in the same Black History Museum, right? aged racist than being able to buy a ticket, walk in, and be like, "That's me," or "That's me." I don't know. My white guy voice is like gone. It's not on demand.
Y'all, thanks so much for watching so far. There's a bunch other great things to talk about. Season 2, Episode 3 of Umbrella Academy. So we're gonna pick up where we left off on the next episode of. Did you see that?
What? Did you see it? Bye.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.